Okay, we are live for episode 241 of Trek Live. How we doing?
Doing good. Excited to be here this morning talking about the potential future of Star Trek and, doing our normal catch up with rewatching. And yeah, I'm excited for it.
Indeed, me too. Freshly back from vacation, eager to get back into this. Like you said, we're kind of going back to a kind of a conversation we've done a few times here. This is a little different than them, though. I would say this is a writer's room. Obviously, if you clicked on the link and you saw the title, you know what you're getting into. This is us trying to put our creative hat on a little bit. In the past, we've done things like kind of. I think we got inspired by the Deep Space Nine documentary, What We Left Behind.
I think that's what it was back in the day. That's
Yeah,
what kind of got us going down this path.
yeah, I think so too. I think the integration of a like writer's room, what would a season 8, episode 1 kind of look like for Deep Space Nine? We did that for Voyager. We did something for Enterprise as well. Um, so those episodes, we kind of were taking something that was concrete, like continuing a show that already existed, and kind of imagining what would another season look like. Um, Here, I think it's a good time to talk about this because it's just it feels like it's constantly uh, out there being talked about. Like, what would a continuation of Picard look like? Obviously, Star Trek Legacy as a series is something people have very much been enthusiastic about, largely for the most part, at least, as a sort of pretty traditional next step in the TV show world of Star Trek. Terry Matalas, the showrunner of season 3, um, kind of picking up exactly where season 3 of Picard left off. It would be the kind of idea there. So we're certainly going to talk about that. What would we think of that? What would we like to see out of that? What kind of a format? The kind of show that would be if we were, people of influence. Um, there's obviously conversation lately about some sort of a movie, whether that's a feature film or a Paramount Plus thing, kind of like Section 31.
So many rumors flying around. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I think because there's just so much out there about like what this would look like and what kinds of opportunities there might be, and obviously people are clamoring, I think, in large part for something. Uh, so we're gonna think about these different options and what would we like to see, what kind of a format would we want to, you know, would we prefer, and what kind of a story would we want to tell? Like where would we want this to go? Where would we want the focus to be? There's a lot to unpack here. How much to focus on legacy stuff? The TNG characters, the 24th century show threads that exist that are easily picked up, and new stuff, stuff that was introduced in Picard, season 3 and before, um, and stuff maybe we haven't seen yet. So we'll get into all that here in a few minutes, but I do want to ask you. We obviously last time we were here a couple weeks ago, we watched or we talked about our recent rewatches in kind of a long format. Spent the episode kind of covering what we watched over the winter break, including your kind of wrapping up of TNG. Have you picked up anything? What have you watched anything in the last couple weeks?
I have.
Mm-hmm.
So I've decided to rewatch Discovery for
Mm-hmm.
the first time. If you
Nice.
guys are following me on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
um, you can see that I have kind of floated out there a little bit, like my next plan, which is either um, Deep Space Nine or Discovery, just because Discovery's right. We're on the heels or on the eve of the last season here. So, and I haven't rewatched some of these episodes since first run. So,
Mm-hmm. A lot of them.
including the first 2 episodes that I've watched since we last talked. So
Nice.
it's obviously is filled with nostalgia. I'm transported back to 2017 and lots of good stuff. Lots of stuff that I really forget. Um, because I think I'll just real quick, just spoilers, like going into it. I think The biggest thing for me is like, do I buy Burnham's decision, or what she ends up doing? And there's lots of building up, and there's lots of foreshadowing to the decision. So I definitely buy what she ends up doing, but I just I always forget that there's some lead up. There's some medical stuff that she's going through. There's some childhood stuff that she's going through
Yeah.
with specifically the Klingons, which
Yeah.
are awesome, by the way. I love them just as much as I did kind of the first run. So I know that was one of those big
Oh yeah.
talking points, with the subtitles and with the language. I
And the new
really
look.
do, and the new look, and yeah, we haven't seen them for 100 years or so. So I just think that they feel dangerous again, and um, I love the start of Discovery.
Did anything? I mean, there's some I would love to talk more about, like going back and rewatching those two episodes for the first time in 5 years. Like I feel like the difference between you and me is I watch Discovery a lot. I've seen it several times, and I feel like those two episodes especially have kind of like seeped into like the soup of Star Trek really easily. Like I put them on and I feel like I know them as well as I know Caretaker or Emissary. You know, the pilots that I've watched over and over and over again since I was a kid, because I've watched them a lot. Um, but having somebody go back to it for the first time in 5 years is an interesting difference. And things there's so much there, like you just mentioned. I'm really glad to hear that, because you were obviously a big dividing line for Discovery's first season, especially, was the Klingon stuff, and you were very pro. You were into it. You liked it then.
Yeah,
For all the reasons you kind of just said here, for the way you react to it on the rewatch, and I'm glad to hear that, even going back to it, and even with Trek in the current format, kind of walking that back a little bit and presenting the Klingons and things like Strange New Worlds and Picard,
yeah,
in more
it's
traditional,
yeah, yeah,
the old school
yeah,
way, with their
yeah,
makeup and the way that they talk, so it's cool to hear that you still kind of appreciate what they were trying to do. And I think you're right. I think, you know because of the story of the Vulcan Hello, and the first time we're seeing it's the first time these characters are really like interacting with Klingons in a long time. The Klingons have been sort of like a sleeping giant far away. There hasn't been direct contact with in a long time. I think it was important for them to feel intimidating and scary and different, and it's the first time really we have, as the audience. We get a little bit of them in Into Darkness, but first time Star Trek's been back in 15 years, and or however 12 years I think it was, on TV. Getting the Klingons back that way, it should jar us. It should like freak us out a little bit, and it was an interesting choice. And I don't know how helpful it was for the show in creating like a lot of grief and struggle for a lot of people, but I think it kind of worked. I definitely agree that it does accomplish that feeling of like, wow, these guys are big and intimidating and different and alien, and not to be messed with, and here we are messing with them. Yeah, so
yeah.
yeah,
Klingons of art. The look of Klingons has always gone up and down in different directions. So I've never had an issue with it. I've always felt that they've felt menacing and dangerous, and just different again. And I think when Brian Fuller set out to kind of get this show off the ground, I think he wanted to do something different and change the perspective on it, because the truth is that we've gone to the Klingon well a lot, and so to kind of step out of the normal light, they had to do something, and I will always like the look. So
yeah, I agree. Jeff obviously, or Jeff agrees with both of us here in the chat. Feels like the Klingons were dangerous, as he imagines they should feel in that era. And the language is amazing, and cool that we get so much of it. It brings a lot of realism to the show, because it makes them feel
yeah, it really does.
like
Yeah,
wow, they're different. They're aliens. Uh, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the first two episodes of Discovery. I like the way that they feel different and exciting, but I think it feels Star Trek to me. Like it feels like a different kind of Star Trek. It feels like a step forward the way that Encounter 4 I'm sure felt to people in 1987, having never seen anything different than the original show. It feels a little different than the Berman era, for lack of a better term. But I seep right into it pretty quickly with yeah, this is Trek. And it's a good start. I'm excited to hear what you say as you get through season one, because it's been so many years. Not many. It's nothing like the time that has passed since Enterprise or anything like that. But it's been enough years that you've given it some time to breathe, and it's going to feel fresh again. There's going to be things that you don't quite remember, in exact detail. So it'll be exciting to talk about these first couple seasons, especially of Discovery, as you get into them.
Yeah.
So, cool.
I'm
I can
excited
just
for it.
Yep. Me too. I just I've been away, so I haven't done a ton. I watched a little bit of the beginning of season 5 of Voyager, Night and Drone, both really good episodes, and then the first 4 of Deep Space Nine season 7, which also contains some good stuff. Favorite episode of that bunch is Drone, for sure, from Voyager. I think that's a really strong, dramatic, emotional episode that gives Jerry Ryan a lot to chew on. I think it charts her growth, her emotional growth really well. Puts her through the ringer. I think the guest star as one, the sort of future technology
Poor
drone,
guy. Yeah.
is really really good. With a tough assignment behind all the prosthetics and in full Borg mode, very rigid, but brings a lot of emotional depth to it through really minimal kind of performance. I think Night is awesome too. I think Night gets better every time I watch it, as sort of a reset for Voyager, being,
First episode of the season, do something like that. That's just bold.
It
to
is.
Start with.
It is. It's unconventional, but it's fitting too. Like, it's coming back into a new season. There's always, like, especially if you don't do a cliffhanger, there's an expectation that maybe some time has passed. So they've been in this malaise for a little bit. They're in the Delta Quadrant going into year 5 of this. They're in a physical void in space, but they're also in like an emotional void. Like they're kind of trudging through, and they're forced to, confront their own emotional, place in all this, and particularly Janeway, and having to like fight through that and be reinvigorated for the kind of last couple of years of what it's going to be. So I really love Night. I think it kind of, it's not another pilot or anything, but it feels like a true season premiere, like kind of a season premiere in the way that these new shows do season premieres, like not necessarily coming out of like a cliffhanger. It's not like Scorpion Part 2 or Redemption Part 2 or anything like that. It's not picking up directly from a story thread left off at the end of the last season. It's some time has passed. We're in a different place, and it's kind of starting thematically like a fresh feel. And I think it's kind of refreshing, actually, because of how often cliffhangers are, the choice in that era of Star Trek. So, season 7 of DS9, real quick. We've covered that a lot in recent months. Ezri Dax looms large in those first handful of episodes. Last episode I watched was Take Me Out to the Holosuite. I just watched it last night.
So
It's pretty fun. I do like it. It's a really good antidote for the really dramatically heavy end of season 6, beginning of season 7. There's not a lot of fun going on in those last handful of episodes of 6, beginning of 7, with the death of Jadzia and picking up the pieces from that. This feels like a real kind of breath of fresh air of like, hey, the show can be fun. Remember, it's got a good sense of humor, and felt like a well-timed kind of breather on that front, with some really good character work for Sisko, actually, too. Kind of cooked into that. So we're trugging along with our rewatches. You're in some really exciting territory. I can't wait to hear again what you think of season 1 of Discovery, especially in the next few episodes here on Trek Live. I'm kind of jealous that you're doing it. I would be watching it, but I feel like I'm not close to Discovery. But if I keep up a good pace, I won't be on Discovery in too long.
Yeah.
So I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like I should be doing it because of the last season, like you're doing. But I also want it to be fresh when I hit it in the kind of formal rewatch I do. So I'm staying away for now, and I'll live vicariously through you as you're
Got
doing
it.
it.
Yep.
So excited to hear what you think. Let's get into the topic of the week and think about what we'd like to see from a hypothetical, for now, continuation of Star Trek Picard in some capacity. I think it doesn't have to be a continuation of Star Trek Picard. I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that it would pick up from like threads directly from what we got at the end of season 3. But given all the news out there, given all the rumors, given all the chatter for the last year now, with what a next show would look like in this kind of part of the universe, where do you kind of sit on this? Like, what would you like to see? Do you want a traditional show? Do you want a movie? Do you want a limited series? Like, where do you think this could live best in your own mind? Like, if you had some power over Star Trek,
I
what would you
yeah.
want to do?
I really think that because the groundwork is already there. Part of the difficulty of getting a show off the ground is you got to cast,
Yeah.
you got to get the uh, writers' room together. You can't just, you know, message Bill and I to come and write your show for you. But I think um, the infrastructure is already there, and there's meat on the bones with these characters.
Yeah.
So it's really like a perfect kind of like, especially with you know um, Paramount really watching the money and stuff, and then really um, like not as on board as putting new shows into the ether. I think there's an opportunity here to capitalize on some of the stuff, the post Picard stuff, because of all that's already kind of set up. So
A lot of goodwill already
um,
too. Yeah.
for me, I would love to do a limited series or like a season. And I know it's kind of tough to kind of swing that. I think movies are really popular right now as far as in the rumor mill, but I think just because of these characters and um, the half the staff, the production team is really just humming. I think it's kind of a perfect hotbed to do a limited series or just to commit to a full season. And I think for me, if I'm putting the writer's cap on, I'm like hitting two birds with one stone here. I'm doing the Star Trek. I don't know, because we've got 7 as far as like this veteran crew, and I think it would be fun to maybe like just like have it mirror to do like a Star Trek Academy crew where like you got this like I don't know, two birds with one stone, where we could get the Academy show and we could also get the Star Trek Legacy is what a lot of people are calling it. But I think Star Trek Legacy might be taken because I think it's a video game, but I could be wrong.
It is a video game. Yeah.
So I won't call it that, but like this continuation of Picard, and I think it would like just mirror really well to really do some interesting stuff with this veteran crew mirrored with some Academy type stuff, and I think there's a lot of stuff to explore on both of those ends. And sorry to keep going on and on, but I think this format would be cool to see because for a long time we focus on one crew or one person or one character, but I think if we disperse between these two types of crews, the veteran and then the legacy, I think there's really a lot to cover, and we could do some interesting things. And because Star Trek to its core is always experimenting with different types of how to structure a show, and I think especially lately. So to structure a show with the mirror of this veteran led 7 crew with this brand new ship, it's like you build this brand new ship just to not utilize it. I just think it's a crime. But um, I think that's kind of my initial thoughts of the writers' room is to go that direction.
I think there's a lot of good story opportunity there too, given what happened at the end of season 3. I think there's some cool things to be mined from sort of disaster that the Borg reaped upon in that last episode, and a lot of casualties, a lot of picking up the pieces, a lot of what I think they're probably going for with the Starfleet Academy show as it's being built, with kind of coming out of the ashes of Starfleet being this really insulated, separated thing in the Discovery part of it.
But
But here they could
real,
do the same thing, and
real,
probably accomplish. Yep. Go ahead.
yeah, real quick, just but they've done that with Star Trek Discovery. It's like,
Mm.
well, we go to this time where it's like, again, Starfleet is in this like
Mm-hmm.
in this spot where like we could do a rebuilding of we could see that, but they don't go that direction. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a show. You don't want to tempt fate by repeating history too often, but I think the similarities are there in terms of like, I think Star Trek Strange New Worlds was such an easy sell for a lot of people because it took elements of even people who aren't big Discovery fans, largely I think, hooked on to Anson Mount and Ethan Peck and like the casting there, and it made Strange New Worlds an easy sell for folks who were even skeptical of Discovery. Um, and I think, and like you said, having the show kind of built already, at least a portion of it. A lot of new casting went on with Strange New Worlds and really well. Jess Bush and Christina Chong. These are all people. Celia Rose Gooding are all people that were not in Discovery. They were new additions to Strange New Worlds as the show. But the sort of basic look of it, the main the big three kind of at the front, having already kind of been established, making it an easy jump in for a lot of people, is also kind of replicated here. I think they could kind of follow the same playbook with, we have Seven, we have Rafi, we have Jack Crusher, we have Sidney LaForge. Like, we have these characters who have been established a little bit, who I think people have some buy-in with. There's meat on the bones there, and then there's opportunities to kind of flesh it out further with new elements, some younger kind of crew that I think, like you said, the name, if you were going to take the name Star Trek Legacy, which has been thrown around over and over and over again, have it be characters who are more grizzled, been through the ringer a little bit. Seven of Nine, Rafi, people who have been through some really difficult experiences, trying to bring along a new generation of Starfleet crew. In the form of Jack Crusher, Sidney LaForge, and some new characters. I'm excited by that kind of notion. I think that would be cool. And then you still have. I'm definitely attracted, as somebody who loves the 90s era Star Trek, having the opportunity to do things with the TNG cast and the Voyager cast and the Deep Space Nine cast that's still around. Like, having that, it's a dicey line to walk. I mean, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want it to become season 3 of Picard all the time. Like, it needs to be its own thing. It would need to be its own enterprise, so to speak. But you have some tools in your toolbox as far as bringing about the new with the old, and taking the name Legacy literally, and having it kind of all mesh together, and bring the best aspects of what Star Trek was into the future, generating some new direction. I think they'd have to embrace being different, and not be too pat, and not lean too heavily into things that have already been done with those existing characters, and playing too much into like continuing stories and paying things off from shows that are 25 years old. I think that's a trap. I think that would be a thing to avoid.
Yeah. Because at the if we do this era, like it's is less restrictive than there's rumors of this Kelvin timeline show or
movie.
Kelvin timeline
Yeah,
movie going 10 years even earlier, and so it feels like it's almost the movie gets put into a box
yeah, you're
because
really boxed in. Yeah,
um but here I think there's a great opportunity to, yeah, I mean there is some stuff that is kind of in the, if we're talking about the Star Trek sandbox, there is some restrictions, but there is a little bit
a
more
lot of freedom.
than say if we went to a different era. And so
Hmm.
I think um the freedom there would be have that, do something new and fresh,
Yeah,
story wise, but also with some of these older characters, because let's face it, the fans and the fandom that do have watched everything is a part of the algorithm of getting
sure.
the numbers up.
Yeah,
So I think you need to really walk this fine balance of, yeah, doing new things, bringing a fresh audience in, but also you need to respect the fan base. And I think that this show is kind of that perfect mix of both of that. I
I
think
agree.
there's an opportunity to do something new because of some of these new characters and younger characters, and then there's time. This era in Star Trek is just kind of wide open, as far as that. But also, there's a bunch of legacy characters,
That you can
like Bill was saying, that
exactly.
you can use, and so um, especially with Prodigy going away, we really don't have that besides Lower Decks, and so I think this is just a great opportunity for um, to kind of waste and kind of get pushed back on the back burner, and you know revisit this 5 years and say, well, what could have been.
Yeah, I think from a timeline standpoint, it's the most exciting time to play in because you get the best of both worlds. I mean, you're further out than anything else that exists currently, except for Discovery, which is so far out into the future now that it's irrelevant. I mean, that's not going to box you in at all. It's so far into the future that nothing you could do really would impact anything that Discovery is kind of teed up. So you have this untouched sandbox in terms of opportunities to be creative, to push the bounds of what kinds of stories you can tell, where you could push the the full picture of Star Trek, the big picture stuff. But you're close enough where you have this opportunity to involve and capitalize on the assets that are still around. I mean, I think season 3 of Picard, you know, was an example that you can do it. Like there are satisfying opportunities there that, if done properly, if handled with grace, you can do a lot of really good stuff with those existing elements and meld them with the new. I mean, yeah. I mean, you think of season 3 Picard, you think of, I mean, I think of, speaking for myself, Frakes and Gates McFadden and seeing these characters again. But I also think of Captain Shaw and Liam and Todd Stashwick, and I think of Ashley Sharp Chestnut as Sidney LaForge. Like I think of these new characters as well, and I think that meld is an exciting opportunity. That would be a tight rope to walk. I think it would be a difficult equation to kind of find balance for, how often to pull people in, especially, in a perfect world. I mean, I think you and I are on the same page here. In a completely perfect world, this would be a 26 episode old school 90s Star Trek show where you have lots of leg room and
That would be awesome.
stories to tell
Yeah.
and play with all this stuff. In a 10 episode season kind of a world, it makes it harder, I think, to kind of find that right balance with bringing in, the legacy stuff, with pushing anew and creating new stuff. Not impossible. It certainly can be done. But I think it does create some challenges. So yeah, it's a tough one. I don't envy the decision makers with, figuring out how to do it, what to do, what would work, what's too like. I can also see. I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth, but like, I see the playbook for Strange New Worlds kind of spawning off of Discovery as like it's an easy sell. The bones are there. It's such an easy jumping off point. But do you want to repeat that playbook? Like, do you want to run the same play again? with that? Like, do you want to take such an easy kind of like you can talk yourself into yes, it worked. One of the reasons Strange New Worlds is so successful is it does. I think it benefited from some of those things, right? Like you knew going into Strange New Worlds that you had buy-in already for like a big element of the cast, and it was exciting, and people had already wanted it. Like the fans came in hungry for it. It wasn't something that they had to be sold on. I think this would be largely the same. Um, but one of the things that got Berman era Trek in trouble over time, I think, with some people was kind of running the same play too many times, with creating shows that kind of mirrored each other and maybe not breaking away enough. So I can kind of see both sides of that argument carrying some weight, like wanting to avoid treading on the same ground too often, but it's not. I mean, you can talk yourself right back into, it's a very different show. It can be a very different show, and the playbook works. So I don't know. It's a tough one.
Yeah, because I think if you look at the other shows, like this era has been successful because it had like different. The structure of each show just felt so much different from each other, and so each new iteration felt different and fresh because we had these serialized seasons with Discovery, and then we went even deeper into that serialization with Picard, and then the opposite reaction is we went the other way, and so we went to more episodic with Strange New Worlds, yeah. And so I think each show that's on air right now has its role, right? The Discovery feels that really ultra serialized nature, whereas the episodic of episodics is Lower Decks, and right now, at least for my money, Strange New Worlds is kind of right in the middle.
Yeah.
And so if you take one of those away, I think we're going to get to a point, again, Phil mentioned it, where it's going to be like, wow, this is kind of telling the same song and dance over and over again. And so I think for this era, whatever we're calling it, the Kurtzman era Trek, to be successful, I think you have to have that balance of each show. Like I think 3 might be the magic number here, as far as shows, unless you want to supplement some of that with some of these movies that have been rumored. But again, I've heard that song and dance again, where it's like you get really, really get excited about this project and then it gets shelved. So it's really hard. But I think I always want to push back against the fandom saying that they're really tired, just because it's like we don't actually know what we really want. But
true. That is true.
I think I'm here to say that I think for this era to be continually successful, meaning shows get put on the air, I think you need a wide variety.
Yeah.
And I think 3 might be the magic number there.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I'm less enticed by the movie idea. I just think, given all the things that we're talking about here, the things that make me excited for this kind of world to play in is there's a lot to do. Like there's a lot of opportunity to do things, and I don't know how much you can accomplish in a singular feature. I think the TNG movies struggled a bit with trying to service lots of characters and not being able to, and thus kind of maybe not hitting on the same sweet spots that the show it's based upon did, in creating a disconnect there. And I think I wouldn't want to repeat that mistake. Not that this would be a TNG, movie per se, but trying to service a lot of things and different characters and different ideas is a tough thing to do in a 2-hour kind of thing. But on a show or a limited series, I'm on board. I mean, one of the things that was talked about very early on, going back to kind of your rewatch recap, thinking about things in 2017 and those Discovery Season 1 days, is there was a lot of talk back then about Star Trek kind of finding different formats. They did with the short treks and to a certain extent going into
Those were
animation.
tests.
They were
Yeah, those
tests.
screen tests, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. But they talked about wanting to do things like individual movies, which we're getting, which is Section 31, and limited series, which was going to be the con thing that never kind of came to be um, on SETI Alpha. You know, I think there are opportunities there. I think limited series are really popular right now. I mean, there are TV entities out there that are some of the most successful things on TV that are in that format. So you know, I think Star Trek could do that. I think it could branch out, and I think maybe this is a sort of property idea that would fit well in that scheme. So I'd be open minded on that front, with less interest in the kind of old school 2 hour movie idea that like Section 31 seems to be, I think, well tailored to. I think Section 31 is perfect for that because it's I don't want to live in Section 31 for too long necessarily. You know, that's not something that I'm like jonesing for without knowing more about it. You know, but I think a 2 hour, you know, short hit of it might be good and it might be interesting. I think there's meat on the bone there, but I think things like that are perfectly kind of calibrated for that, but maybe not so much for a show. And I think those are reversed here. I think this is more of a show or a limited series and less of a feature kind of idea. So
Yeah, I think specifically with Section 31, I think the less we know, the better that whole entity is. So,
yes,
um,
it really struck me because I'm in season 7. At the end of season 6, towards the back half of season 6, you get Inquisition, which is the first episode with Section 31 in Deep Space Nine, and 100%. Like when you watch that episode in a vacuum, Section 31 is weird and scary and unknowable
unknown,
and
yeah,
like in the shadows, truly in the shadows. And to be honest, like between Enterprise and Into Darkness and Discovery, you know, that has been blown up, you know, a couple times over now. You know, I mean, I think they've gone back to that well too many times. But you know, we'll see. We'll see what the movie does. I'm excited for Michelle Yeoh. I'm excited to see what they do. And I think the movie format is the right one for that. But less so for this Picard continuation that we're talking about here today.
But another idea that I would have for maybe this continuation is because with Star Trek Picard, it really took a character under a microscope and got really into like this character, just exploring this character.
Yeah.
And so maybe do that with a character in this time frame in this era, so you can stay, and so you know some of these people can still pop in, like we said, like the Seven and all these legacy characters can pop in, but you can do something fresh with just make up a new character.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people would like that.
And then really put them under the microscope, like we did with Picard in the first 2 seasons. So, which can again, you could talk yourself out of that as well, because you could say like how successful were those first 2 seasons, but I think it's you could just stay true to that type of show, and I think you could do have that freshness of bringing in this new character that we don't know much about, and really do like the microscope thing, but also have, you know, again, these legacy characters pop in, because I think you would get best of both worlds, pun intended, because you'd service the fans by staying in this era, but doing something fresh with starting something new with putting a character or a event or a species under the microscope, but then also being able to really service and keep the fans intrigued with some of these legacy characters popping in and out.
Yeah, I'm open to anything with that. I liked the concept of Picard. You know, it was obviously it's an easy sell because it was Picard. Like it's a really iconic character that I think people were excited to see again. You know, opinions will vary on how often it was successful in terms of like seasons 1, 2, and 3. But I think the concept was sound. And the other thing, I mean, I think especially early on, I think Discovery tried to do that with Burnham. I think in the early days of Discovery, especially in the first season, 2 seasons, really the whole show. But I think you remember like in the selling of the show and explaining it, it's unique. It's not coming from the perspective of the captain. It's the first officer to start. Um, but it's really going to be almost like a first person kind of like you're seeing it through the eyes of this individual character. And there was a lot of pushback to that at the time
Yeah,
for all kinds of reasons that are in sometimes bad faith, I think. Um, but I I'm into that as an idea. I love early discovery, and I thought that was refreshing and different to experience these things through like that singular lens and feel like I think that makes it feel more lived in and real. Like I can get in the shoes of an individual person having these events kind of happen to them. I think that creates a different flavor for the universe and makes it feel more lived in and less passive. The way that the shows typically are handled, like where we're watching these cast of characters kind of go through these events. I mean, it's awesome. That's how I fell in love with Star Trek. But I felt like Discovery and Picard kind of created a more intimate feel for the universe, and
definitely.
I like that. And it would create some opportunities to ensure that you have some new being cooked and not just kind of pulling from the well of existing continuity and characters and threads, because I really do think that's a trap. You don't want to live too much in the past and be too reliant on picking up on threads and characters and elements from shows that are 25 years old and you know not everybody that's watching today
Yeah.
is real up on and might not be that invested in. You know, some of us are. Some of us will, eat that up and ask for more all day long. But I think it's important to have um, the new there too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard because I really think that they've done a really fantastic job of the premise always feels different from each other. Yeah, there's some similarities with, it is technically a crew and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the landscape of Starfleet. This is what Star
Yeah,
Trek is.
that's
So
true.
even if you look at the Berman era Trek,
Mm-hmm.
the premise is
They're all different.
they're all different
Yeah,
from each
they're all
other.
very different
Voyager
shows.
is
Mm-hmm.
different from a space station.
Yes, 100%.
The next generation is the setting is different from Deep Space Nine. So I think, um, they've done a great job with the franchise of keeping the premise very different and
Yeah.
fresh. But I think where they fall into um, some traps is retelling some of these stories, and I think that's where if we went again a very character driven um, kind of style of show, I think there's an opportunity to lean on the characters and stuff like that as
Mm-hmm.
far as keeping this show fresh
Yeah.
for at least a season. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's where I kind of I have to kind of remind myself. I'm like, it's not really the premise; it's really like the story structure and people, writers staying the same through some of those eras.
Yeah.
And I think you're always gonna see some overlap, but I think that where the really have to focus to keep it fresh I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's dozens and dozens of premises of shows where there's going to be a never ending with this Star Trek universe. I think it's just the types of stories that are told, um, and just keeping it fresh. And so I know it's it is disappointing to not be able to have like a really strong stable of writers and stuff. But I think to a certain extent, you'd almost want fresh ideas and fresh people in there.
Yeah.
So,
There's some
because yeah,
benefit to that. Yeah.
there is some benefit to that, and there's also just a no shortage of premises. So, I don't really necessarily think we should be hung up on the premise as much.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of story structure
And character.
what kind of in character.
Yeah, character is always the thing. I think the reason that we go back to these shows and want to, I mean, the premise is important. The setting is very important. But I think always, always, always with the show, the reason you go back to it is the characters. You want to be with the people. Like the characters are people that you want to spend time with, and that's that's it. I mean, that's the success or failure of the show is going to ride on that. I do think it's interesting. There was an interview, I think this week, with the actor Elias Tufixis. I think is the way you say his name. He's the one of the antagonists in season 5 of Discovery. He was interviewed and he was talking about the structure of season 5. Ironically, kind of feeling very Strange New Worlds. It's got like an overarching thing that's kind of pulling the whole season together, but the episodes are very individual. Like they're kind of episodic. He says that there are a couple episodes that he's not in at all, and he might pop in at the end to like kind of put a button on like the continuing thing, but he's completely uninvolved with the thing that Captain Burnham and Saru and the Discovery are doing. And then there are other episodes he's very involved. They're very like focused on him. So I guess I'll be interesting to see. I mean, hopefully Star Trek's healthy and Paramount figures its ish out, and we can get keep it rolling here. But it'd be interesting to see like did Strange New Worlds kind of crack the code of like the format of how Star Trek works best with that, like character continuity, emotional continuity, threads pulling through, maybe having like a B plot sort of structure pulling the season together, but allowing that individual episode, tonal shifting of the thing that we've talked about since day one on Trek Live. I think if you go back to like
before
first
Discovery,
episode,
yeah, it was like let's just
we like that. That's a big part of
best
I think
of both worlds. Yeah,
Star Trek, and I think if that's what they're doing with Discovery season 5, and that's what Strange New Worlds has been so successful with, would a show like this work best with that kind of format as well? Like, kind of a pull, something to connect these episodes, making sure that there's emotional continuity and character continuity, but allowing the stories to be diverse in tone, in genre, and in type, so that you can bounce around a little bit and you can give these different characters different things to do, and they don't feel like they're kind of doing the same thing over and over again and not growing and changing. So I would think so. I think that's the big lesson of Strange New Worlds to me. I think they have uncracked a code. I think Strange New Worlds is serialized, kind of. I think Strange New Worlds feels the closest to Deep Space Nine in that the character stuff matters and it impacts episodes and seasons down the line. We're seeing that stuff build and build and build, but you can bounce around tonally, like those old scientists under the Cloak of War to Subspace Rhapsody. Like that is possible in the constraints of that show. I think Star Trek works best when it can do that. And I would endorse. I mean, I'm all for it. You've said it, and you made a really good case. And I think there's still room to play with this. The shows need to be individual in those kinds of respects. Like I think you said it. Discovery kind of fits a bill, and it has serviced a kind of Star Trek, while Picard has serviced a different, and Lower Decks has serviced a different, and Strange Worlds has covered a different ground. I think that's definitely possible, while still kind of keeping an eye on that Strange New Worlds model as kind of maybe the starting point, to make sure that you have the room to tell different kinds of stories and not feel like you're following too close of a pulled tightly, story arc that you can't divert from.
Yeah, I just think that Discovery was like it served its purpose of breathing a new type of structure and storytelling into a really tired franchise, because I think you're right, Bill. The code has been cracked by Deep Space Nine, I think, and so we're just seeing a modern version of that.
Yes.
in Strange New Worlds. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that's if we're really in this hotbed pressure situation of trying to get new Star Trek on, keep it on TV. I think it's the Strange New Worlds Deep Space Nine format, where it's like episodic / really serialized story threads through it. So
yeah.
But in Star Trek, we've always had one or the other. We've always had one really super episodic, and then again, like let's take it like Berman Air, for example. Next Generation,
pretty episodic.
super episodic. What do we get directly after that, Deep
Yeah,
Space Nine,
yeah.
and so it's really like um,
They kind of flip,
just
right?
ebbs
Yeah,
and flows.
yeah,
I think so.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think this is going to be the year for this. There's going to be a lot of news on these kinds of fronts with the Paramount stuff. I think that needs to settle down. Something needs to give on that front. There are some developments that we're not going to get into. It's not my wheelhouse, but there are podcasts to listen to. You can seek out all kinds of news. Go to Trek Core, Trek Movie, those kinds of sources to get the lowdown on where those things kind of stand. Uh, I think there are some possibilities that could be good for Star Trek. Skydance is a company that was on '09 and Into Darkness, I believe, beyond like the Kelvin. Alex Kurtzman has had a relationship. Like, if they are a big player in this new Paramount structure, I think that's good for Star Trek. What it means for Paramount Plus and where these shows live, whole different story.
Who knows?
Who knows? Like, there's a lot that needs to play out, but I think there are some optimistic possibilities that could lead to some good things for Star Trek in the future. Um, but this year is certainly going to be a big one as far as like, what does the future of Star Trek look like? Is it healthy? Are we kind of winding down a little bit here because of all these political, within the studio, political kinds of turbulent times, or are we in a good spot? 2024 is going to answer a lot of those questions, I think. So we'll stay tuned. We're eagerly waiting to see if anything that we talked about here today comes to pass. Does this happen? Does it not? Do they stay away? Do we just get Strange New Worlds and Section 31 movie and Starfleet Academy and Lower Decks, and that's it? With Prodigy fighting for its life over on Netflix. We'll see. It'll be interesting. I don't know what else to say other than we're here for it and we're rooting for all of it.
Yep.
Can't wait for Discovery to come back. Can't wait for Prodigy to come back. Looking forward to all of it and more. So.
Yep, you guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Twitter/X, Discord server is a great place to keep the discussion going. I want to thank Jeff for sticking with us this morning. And thanks to everybody for watching it after the fact. And
let us know what you think.
Let us know what you think. What show would you like to see? Let us know either down in the comments, down in the Discord server, or on Twitter, or any wherever social media you guys take part in. I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Great. Thanks, everybody.